Okay, well, thank you and welcome to another episode of the Jain Irrigation Training Series. I'm your host, Richard Restuccia, and today we're going to be talking about the irrigation industry and the outlook for 2023. And to help us along with this, we have the president of Jain Irrigation, Aric Olson, who's been a guest on our show many times. And what I really appreciate about Aric and why he is so good about what he's doing right now is he's got this insight as to what's happening in agriculture, in irrigation, and also the economy. And we really don't see this in too many CEOs or presidents in the industry right now that have that triple threat to what they're saying. And on top of this, Aric's really his foresight and interest in technology and where we're going in irrigation or where we need to go has been extremely helpful. We really appreciate that he's on today to kind of share his insights of what he sees coming in 2023, what we need to be aware of, and what we need to look for in order to be successful in 2023. So Aric, thanks for joining us today. Really appreciate you coming on the show.
Hey, thanks, Richard. Nice to be here again. And as always, I appreciate you doing this 2 times a week for a couple of years now. So thank you.
Yeah, well, thank you. And Aric, you were on to talk about 2022 about 14 months ago or so. Based on my notes, I think some of your predictions and forecasts were super accurate. But I want to hear from you. What do you think? How do you think you did last year?
Yeah, I mean, we're here to kind of talk about 2023 and what we think will happen and will the irrigation industry grow. But it's good. You can go back and we did that presentation in, I think it was November of 2021. And we did the same kind of prediction for 2022 season just to see kind of how we did. And it's always dangerous doing these because these are on like YouTube forever. And if you do a really bad job, you might be out of work, right? Or not be asked to come back again. So you asked me to come back and do this again. So we must have did okay. So what did we predict for the irrigation industry? We predicted that the ag irrigation industry would grow about 15% in aggregate. And so there was quite a disparate number, of statistics. The middle part of the country, center pivot land, did really, really well, probably had aggregate growth of 25%. Some of the permanent crops in the drip segments probably had lesser growth. So when you combine all of this, I think we were really spot on with that 15% growth. You can go back and see that presentation. A lot of this sales growth was price increases in inflation related. So, but we talked about that. We talked about unit volume growth, and it really was different again on permanent crops versus commodity crops. And we were in a drought then, and we talked quite a bit about that. And we talked about the dollar strength. We still have a very strong dollar, and we talked about the impacts on ag that the strong dollar has, and we're still living with that. We were really headed into some high inflation, and so we had rough inflation numbers, and we had some labor shortages. So kind of taking this full context, we did a great job, I think, forecasting last year. We'll try to do the same this year. I think the picture's a little bit different. And, I'm starting off this first slide, and I got a couple things to show. One is the drought monitor, and you can still see California and then a lot of the Midwest. We're still in a pretty significant drought. This picture changed over the last 3 weeks in California. We were in exceptional drought, and then we got these large rain and snow events, these atmospheric rivers that came through. And this picture's dramatically changed today from where we were 3 weeks ago. The picture on the right shows the snowpack in the Sierras. Yeah. And today it's 200% of of a normal year for snowpack, and it's just really massive snow events. So as long as it doesn't get too hot, that snowpack's going to provide us with a very good water season, and our reservoirs are filled up. All of that's good news for agriculture in California. Concerning is that Midwest, we're still in extreme drought. And that will, there'll be a lot of irrigation needed in the coming season if we don't get out of drought there.
So Aric, that's the irrigation outlook, and yeah, I got to compliment you on a very good forecast last year. Looking to 2023 now, a lot of people are worried about what's happening with the economy. You can't pick up the paper, look at Twitter, whatever, without seeing some worries about the economy in 2023 in general. What are your thoughts on that?
I worry about this becoming a kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy that we keep talking about it, and then we'll put ourselves in a recession. But there are definitely global challenges. You have the Ukraine conflict. We have that. We have the COVID resolution in China. So there's a lot of global dynamics that are happening, and we hear more about global recession, say in Europe, than we might typically talk about, say in the US here, but you hear it in layoffs. We're getting those announcements from the tech company.
So I see the 1206 is right on time right now, passing the freight train passing Jain.
But yeah, back to the economy. I think, overall the ag economy on certain segments is doing actually quite well, and maybe not so well in other segments, say permanent crops, tree nuts. Those segments are suffering. The cannabis market's not doing well, but corn and soybeans, markets are doing just fabulous. From the ag economy looks good. And I'll show in a few slides this kind of shock of interest rate increases. I think is really going to impact the economy. So we'll talk about that in a few more slides.
Yeah, so I think that's interesting what you said about the self-fulfilling prophecy, right? But we certainly have heard a lot worse news than we're actually feeling. And so I think that's good. One of the things that we've talked about, or anybody who's bought anything in the last 3 years knows supply chain, and probably hadn't heard it maybe in their entire life before. For a lot of people, we just thought, you bought stuff, you ordered it, you got it the next day, whatever. That all changed 3 years ago. How about going forward? Is the supply chain situation changing?
Yeah, if you can go back 13 months ago when we gave our presentation, the supply chain was front and center. We showed a file that had so many ships that were out in the Pacific waiting to get into Long Beach or Oakland and into LA ports, and it was really quite awful. Boats from India and China were taking 120, 130, 140 days. A lot of it was floating in the Pacific, just waiting to dock. Today, it's radically changed. Also, a year ago, we had costs that were just extreme. A container from China would be, north of $15,000. Now we're talking about being under $2,000 for a container from China. So you got lead times collapsing on containers from Asia, from maybe 130 days to 70 days from India. So a dramatic shortening of the cycle time there. And then the cost is way down. We can get containers from India to, say, USA for under $2,500 a container. So this is radically changed and resolved in terms of hard goods and general freight. On the electronic side, we're still not quite where we are on the hard goods, that there are certain components that are still not available, but this is changing very quickly, and the supplies really probably are going to be back in stock, and say over the next 6 months, you won't hear so much about these electronics shortages. So, in general, freight has come way down compared to where we were 13, 14 months ago. And the global supply chains are really, I would say, back to normal, minus what's happening in Europe. There are, port strikes and things that are happening in Europe. So the lead times, say, out of Europe to certain parts of the USA are still quite long. There is some risk, and the costs haven't come all the way back, from pre-pandemic levels, Europe to the USA. But overall, supply chains, we can, more rely on stocks today. Now, one challenge here is that because we all had these problems, is we've all beefed up our inventory. So most businesses are probably carrying too much inventory for the level of business that they might likely have. And so this could put a drag on the economy while we get these inventories levels back work. But we're working through this bullwhip effect of supply chain issues, over ordering, and it might be another year and we'll be back to kind of a good global operating supply chain.
Yeah, I think that insight's so interesting, Aric, and helpful because again, what we perceive as a slowdown isn't necessarily just a slowdown. It's having too much inventory because supply chain has finally caught up and things delivered. Demand's still pretty much the same. It's just people have a little extra due to a catch up in what's been delivered to them.
Yeah, correct. And kind of on this topic, we have the same thing happening on resins actually. That we had resins that were peaking in price during mid to late 2021. That resins peaked globally, and you can see this blue line here on the screen is USA domestic high density polyethylene price, and below it those gray bars show a price from China plus freight, and there's quite a differential there when the USA was very, very high. And the main driver for that was there wasn't containers available to ship resin. And so domestically, the producers were able to charge whatever they wanted for price. And we lost a global market on resin. We lost this global supply demand price complex. That is since being fixed with these containers being available. Now we're seeing the domestic high density polyethylene coming down more towards the global price. And you see that blue line matching the top gray bar, much closer. So we're getting a global high density polyethylene contract base of $1,500 a metric ton. And I think, spot market's going to be less than that. And we should see that come. Now, growers always ask, and dealers, well, when do I get that lower priced polyethylene or PVC? And it takes quite a while to work these inventories through the supply chain to the grower. But I do expect resins to continue to come down to the end user through calendar year 2023. We have less freight costs, handling costs. So we're really going to see, I think, some modest deflation in resins, both PE and PVC. We're seeing it on other commodities as well. It's going to take a while, though. Today, the cost of our irrigation systems going to growers is probably still 40% higher than the cost of a system, right when the pandemic started, pre-pandemic. Still 40% high, and a lot of that is materials. And so that will, I believe, come down over the course of this year. We do have labor inflation, and as I said on our last call 13 months ago, labor inflation is usually not transitory, and that labor rates are usually there to stick. So I'm hoping the cost of the systems come down for the growers, but it'll take a while to move this through the inventory, and the labor, is probably more fixed there at the current rates.
So Aric, you've been involved successfully in irrigation manufacturing for a long time. Have you ever seen anything like this before?
The pricing's interesting. We've seen I've seen a couple times, like right when I started in the irrigation industry, the 2005, 2006 period, we had a 50 cent a pound resin that went to $1 a pound, and you couldn't get resin. That was that Hurricane Katrina kind of impact. That was very significant. And you're seeing a similar trend that happened in 2020, through 2021 here. And this is the COVID kind of supply chain contraction where we couldn't ship resin, overseas, and you really had kind of a captive market. The demand was pretty strong, and the supply, we didn't have a global supply market. A lot of factories were shut down. And then we also had that wild Texas polar vortex where we lost, it seemed like 2 to 3 months of production at some plants. those, compounded one another, and that's why resin really spiked in the USA. So pretty big trend, really almost like that hurricane. Now the hurricane impact was really a kind of a shock, and it was, took 6-7 months to unwind. This unwinding of this high prices here, it's taking a lot longer.
Yes, we have a question coming in from one of the viewers, and that is, how do these storms actually, especially in the Texas, Houston area, how do they actually impact? What is the impact?
Well, this polar vortex that came through, it basically kind of froze up the system there, and then they just weren't ready for that type of frozen weather, and they couldn't get the plants restarted, and they had equipment issues. Hurricanes are, a little different. They're able to handle hurricanes coming through, but they basically have to shut down and evacuate and then come back and do a big startup. It takes quite a while to shut down these plants and start them up. So hurricane, it's, typically you might lose a month of production, but this polar vortex where, the system parts and components were, basically frozen, it was so cold there, and just couldn't get they needed a lot of repairs. And so it wasn't a normal hurricane shutdown startup event. It was something totally different where they needed repairs. I wanted to show this slide that kind of shows how well corn farmers are doing. And this is cash receipts for selected crops. This is produced by the USDA and the ERS service, and corn farmers had an incredible year. Over about $90 billion of a corn crop was produced last year, and that's almost double of 2020. I mean, that's just an amazing statistic and change that we don't typically see anywhere. A doubling of output within a 2-year window. So, that's the corn farmers doing a tremendous job there. And even soybeans, just a radical improvement there. Obviously, with the good prices, over $6 a bushel on corn, I mean, that you can really make some good money. So our farmers in the Midwest are doing very well. And when our farmers do well, then they invest in irrigation and technology, and they are doing that. You don't see these types of increases in the fruits and nuts or vegetable markets or cotton. In those markets, there's a lot more drip and micro irrigation put in. So we don't see kind of the radical growth that we talked about where the center pivot companies experience versus the drip micro companies. But in general, 2022 is really a darn good year for farmers. Their net farm income is going to be the highest since 1973.
Wow.
And that's just a huge positive. And, when they make that type of profit, and again, they'll invest back into equipment and irrigation gear. We did talk last year about, energy costs and fertilizer costs and availability. And we did some segments together, Richard, on the fertilizer use and the cost of fertilizer, and spent a lot of time last year studying that. The growers did this really good net farm income while seeing their cost go up by almost 12%. So they really did a good job. Again, this is the gross farm income. It's not all farmers, it's not all crops. We have other, crop segments, almonds and pistachios, where the pricing's not good. The almond pricing, is under the cost of many producers today at this rate. So the almond farmer is not doing so good. The cannabis market also not so good in terms of pricing. One of the drivers of how we do in agriculture is the strength of the dollar. I talked about this a year ago, and we had a very high dollar at the time. And, my comment last year was anytime the dollar index is above 80, there might be some 80 or 90, there might be some pressure on our farmers. Well, we had a really high and growing dollar last year in 2022. It's come down since by a good amount, a good 10% over the last few months, and that'll actually help farmers. But you can see the dollar is still very, very strong. when the dollar's strong, our growers are not doing that well. It's harder to export. So then when they don't do well, then they don't typically invest as much. Growers are seeing costs go up on the fertilizer I talked about, labor. They've also seen significant cost increases of water. This is one of the water indexes that we can see and monitor the cost and the value of water. It's this NQH2O index, and it shows the cost of water and $1 per acre foot. And then you can see those dark blue boxes are when we have, say, California drought. And you can see when we didn't have this drought period in 2017 through early 2020, the cost of the water on spot market is under $300 an acre foot. When we're in a significant drought, it can go above $800 a foot. So if a grower doesn't have access to water, needs to buy spot market water, last year they're paying over $1,000 an acre foot. And when you need 3 acre feet and you got to pay $1,000 an acre foot, $3,000 an acre just for that water, that's a significant expense. And so, and then you can also see just this general trend. Water, looks like utilities. Utilities seem like they always go up and they never come down. And I think water will be priced in more like this in the future. Now, not everyone has this level of water cost. If you got, pretty good water rights or Colorado River water, I mean, you could be paying $20 an acre foot. And if you're in the west side of the Central Valley and you don't have very good water rights, you might be paying $1,000. So there's a huge disparate connection in the price of water for growers of the same crops. So something to keep in mind. Looking at the general economy, one of my favorite metrics to think about for landscape irrigation and a driver of landscape irrigation is housing starts. And you can get a lot of good insight. If we're building houses, they're going to typically put in hopefully irrigation and landscape, and this is a big driver for landscape irrigation. So you can see the housing start graphs over the last 20 years, and this is like right now, that's in thousands of units per year. So that'd be like the 1,500 means 1.5 million houses built per year for the US. And you can see it's coming down, and it's been coming down from about 1,750 down to 1,400. We just got the statistics last week. We're at 1,300 now as of last week, 1,300. So that's going to drop a little bit. And you can see we're really out of this trend line coming out now. And you say, well, what's driving that? And, we all know that interest rates, when they were low, mortgages were 3%, people were refinancing and buying houses. Now that mortgage rates are over 6%, less people are going to buy houses. It's, kind of obvious. And that is happening. And I worked in the home building industry for a few years, and I spent time and saw this interest rates go up from 2004 to 2006 and 2007. And then you could see just this collapse in the housing market. I don't think we're going to have anything like that, because there's a fundamental underlying strong demand for housing for the number of people that we have in the country. But I do expect this housing starts to drop. And I do believe it can go below 1 million units this year in calendar year 23. I think we'll see this drop all the way below 1,000 just because this interest rates are high. I'm worried that they're overshooting this interest rate kind of correction. And that's a big increase of interest rates that we haven't seen. Nothing on this graph shows that type of increase. And I think we're going to see a self-induced shock on the housing units. Now that will impact the landscape irrigation. But also when we build houses, we use a lot of PVC and polyethylene for piping to get water to and through the house. So that's likely going to, put a damper on demand for polyethylene pipe and PVC pipe. That means that piping will be available for ag business. And because this demand probably will drop, you're likely to see prices drop quite a bit, like I've talked about already. With this interest rate change, it's also going to hurt us a little bit on the ag side. You're going to see maybe land prices coming down a little bit more. Back when we had these very low cost interest rates, there's a lot of investments that were done, in land and in ag systems. And so in general, I think this is helping fuel some developments for almonds and other things. And, this interest rate increase will definitely impact, what investors are coming in and buying land and doing development. So that's not helping us either on the ag side.
So Aric, I just wanted to ask about that too, right? Because we've got a lot of almond growers in California that are watching, and we see all these inputs up. We see people making more money as a result of maybe some wage increases, and maybe that's helping them keep up with inflation or not. But we see the price of almonds keep coming down and down and down. What's causing that?
Yeah, with almonds, it's a really interesting study. I mean, the almond production graph looks very similar to the corn production graph. It's just, it's been over a 10-year increase. The almond crop, I think, is around 2.6 billion pounds last year. And this is, up from under 2 billion pounds a number of years ago. And so you just have this massive growth of acres and almonds coming online. And it all came online at a time when our global freight locked up and we couldn't ship almonds. We also had a high dollar, so people weren't buying almonds. So it's kind of, all the bad things happen to the almond farmer all at the same time. Now shipping's resolving, so those container costs, the dollar's softening, all of those things will help liquidate the almond inventory and get it out to the end user markets where people can enjoy those almonds. But it will take some more time to resolve the kind of the supply demand inventory, where that prices will come up to a level where it's above production costs. If you don't own your land, I would say it's hard to make money farming almonds. And even if you are farming your land and it's paid for and you have cheap water, it's still difficult with all the high costs, power, fertilizer, labor to manage a profit in almonds. It might take a year before we get back to a reasonable situation. And when profits are made in almond farming, the almond farmers really do reinvest in, and then we see a drip of micro demand really go up. So kind of pulling all these themes together, what do we think the irrigation industry will do in 2023? Will they have growth or will we have decline? And for the landscape irrigation market, I think there's going to be about 0% growth. I do think the supply chains and there's a lot of inventory in the pipeline that people are stocking and holding on to. I do think there'll be some revenue growth because we do have inflation. And while the commodity prices are going to come down, I think you have this inherent labor costs. Labor costs are still very high. And so I think, landscape market might be flat to up single digits. On the ag irrigation side, I think we're likely to see good volume growth in the middle part of the country and center pivot. You see how well the corn farmers are doing, the huge crop at a good price. We're likely to see center pivot companies do pretty well. There's probably going to be a little bit of price inflation. I do think the commodities, PVC and polyethylene, are going to come down over the year, but not all that's going to reach the grower, early in the year. It's going to be towards maybe the end of the year when the prices actually come down. So we definitely have regional kind of aspects. We might have drip and micro companies under a little pressure to grow, whereas the center pivot companies should do pretty good. In aggregate, I'd say ag irrigation will have a 5% growth this year, and that's you got some recession pressure as well. And overall, our industry, actually, it's a good size industry, and its impacts, we typically follow a GDP growth. So, we're probably a little higher. I'm predicting a little higher here than GDP, just because the corn and soybean farmers are doing so well.
Well, that's a pretty, I'll take that prediction, and certainly I give it a lot of value. I don't know of anyone else that really has the insight you have into this. So thanks for that. We do have a question from a viewer, and it has to do with the Farm Bill and how EQIP funding might fare. And will this, if they push it through, if it passes, is this going to help drip irrigation?
Yeah, EQIP is really a great program to help get new technologies out there to help grow better crops with less water and resources. And I've learned in my 17 years in this space that it is really regional and geographically specific for certain crops. I think they do a reasonable job of getting the funding out where it's needed and to help growers there. And I think we're all very optimistic that we're going to have a good farm bill, and it will make a difference and it will make an impact. But this takes time. These investment decisions that farmers make, these are long-term investments. They're 20-year plus ideas. And so this takes time to get through, but we're optimistic that we're going to have a good farm bill and EQIP, and we're seeing some incentives that will be there that certain segments definitely count on to help do some cost share.
Well, the thing it always reminds me of too is in farming, you can't control the price. That's an uncontrollable. So if you can manage your costs or invest or get some help investing in technology, you're much more likely to come out ahead, right?
Yeah, I think that's the best thing that we can do is irrigation professionals and irrigation professionals that are focused in ag. If you say, well, how what can we do in a tough market? The best thing that we can do is work with the growers to help them reduce their production costs, not try to sell them tools or solutions that might increase yield, but really focus on the cost side of the equation. And if we can provide services or solutions that allow them to do a good job and have a cost reduction, it's certainly needed, especially in markets like the tree, vine, and nut farmers in California right now, where their cost of production may be above the selling price. It's very important. A few points on 2023 that we've gone from significant drought in 3 years to we've had horrific flooding events. So while the moisture and snowpack is needed and welcome and our reservoirs filling up, we got some significant flooding devastation that happened through the state. This is a picture. You can see a tree farm there, totally underwater. So that's definitely going to have some impact, and it's going to take a while. There's going to be some damage there, so that hurts. I'm glad we got the water and the snowpack, but the flooding definitely hurt us. China is going to be interesting post-COVID. What happens with the economy, and does this give some fuel for our global economy to stave off recession? That'll be important. We still have high energy costs in Europe, mainly due to the Ukraine conflict. If we could get somehow some resolution to the Ukrainian conflict, I think probably global recession is probably off the table, right? I mean, this would really allow the global economy to roll. And we talk about global recession. I think we're definitely seeing some signs that this could happen. In the US, we're seeing layoffs in certain things, certain segments, and I'm sure hoping we can avoid that. Those interest rates, if they would just maybe pause a little bit and then not go so crazy, just take a breather, I think it would definitely help us. And then growers are facing these input costs. They still haven't come down. Fertilizer has come down, and fertilizer will be more available, and it's not as wild as it was last year. Very difficult last year to fertilize and fertigate. I still think it's important to manage that. And long term, we still got water supply issues, major issues in the West and in the Western 14 states, and then water quality is an ongoing thing we need to manage.
Yeah, that's a lot there, but a lot of good things to watch, and we have access to all the information to watch it as well.
Yeah, so as I wrap up here on the last slide, we have some big news that I think a lot of hopefully our audience members are aware that Jain Irrigation is merging with Rivulis, and this is pretty exciting because we're creating this global climate and irrigation leader. And immediately when we close, we'll be the second largest irrigation company worldwide. We had this announcement in June. That was the signing date, and it's taken us a little bit to close. It's a big global merger with a lot of jurisdictions that had to get approval. We are expecting to close sometime in this quarter, so we're excited about that to be able to move on. There'll be really exciting opportunities for the Jain USA team and merging with Rivulis, and it'll be quite a real nice business here. And so I just wanted to take a minute to thank all the Jain employees, the current and past employees that really helped build Jain Irrigation to what it is today. The employees, current and past employees, helped increase the revenue since 2006 by 10x and the earnings by 20 times. So that's really a job well done, and they created the micro irrigation leader in the space. So I'm really proud of the team. I know I'm showing a picture here of a sales team at World Ag Expo, but there's 400 plus employees here that really made a difference and made Jain Irrigation the leader. And I want to thank the customers, loyal customers, growers, and partners for all this success we've had. So thank you.
Yeah, well, thank you, Aric. And let me tell you, as you know, I've worked directly for you for over 8 years now, the longest tenure I've had with any one person. And I really appreciated every moment of it. Your insight and your leadership, especially in technology, was very valuable. And then personally, what I learned from you from just general management, financials, and business, I have that to keep for the rest of my time, and it's been great, and I really appreciate all you've done.
Yeah, I feel the same about you and all of our employees, and I wanted to take a minute to talk about moving forward. I will be working more directly with the dealers. Today, my job is a little bit split. I spend a little time at Jain Irrigation, a little bit on tech, and a little bit on the dealer. And I'm going to work 100% of my time when we close in the irrigation services division, which is our dealer business. And it's a global business. And I'm really excited that we're going to be able to bring water management solutions to growers at the dealer business. And we're going to be introducing climate farming and help our growers get climate credits. We'll be introducing irrigation as a service. We're uniquely positioned that we have the technology capability and the crews to do irrigation as a service, where not only do we use satellite imagery soil moisture to set an optimized schedule, but we can actually run the irrigation with the grower at a reduced cost, and this will be a benefit to the grower. This isn't going to be for everyone, but for a grower that has maybe 60 to 400 acres, where we're able to provide irrigation, running the irrigation using these tools at a cost that's of value to the grower. We're excited, and we'll be rolling that out in addition to the climate farming aspects and other services that will bring in our irrigation services division, which is known in California as our dealer business. And we're gonna really significantly grow this business as well, and it'll be a good, strong term global business as well. So I'm excited about that. We have great managers and leaders like you, Richard, and we got so many people that are going to do fabulous in this new combined entity. And I'm glad I get to continue working with the team in a different way, in a different capacity. And I'm super excited, and I'm looking forward to see what the team will be able to do with the new merged entity.
Yeah, and it's exciting too, Eric, from this standpoint. Our dealers are really the ones that are closest to the growers, and the technology you're bringing to the growers, using the dealers to do it, it makes a lot of sense, and get it to where we have some great relationships. So very, very exciting. I'm very much looking forward to the future here.
Yep. So thank you, Richard. The next time you might have me on, I might be in a different role. So thank you so much.
Yeah, you bet. And thank you for coming on today and talking about all this. I do plan on asking you back. I hope you will come back many more times in the future. I want to thank everybody for joining us today. We know how busy everybody is these days, and we appreciate you spending a little time of your day with us to talk about irrigation. As you know, all our trainings are on the JainsUSA.com website /trainings. Or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast, you can find us there too. It's really fun to think that people are out there working and learning at the same time about irrigation. I love that thought, and it's what keeps us going. So again, Eric, thanks for your time today. Thank you, everybody. And we're going to be back next week talking a little bit about World Ag, which is going to happen again in February. So thanks a lot, everybody. Bye now.